Hi, my name is Kwaku, and I work across music, heritage, the environment, and a number of community engagement interventions, as you can see from the logos on the banner behind me and on the screen. Anyway, I was at the working group of experts on people of African descent symposium at the University of West London. And looking at the program and the time, I did not think it was worth me even making an effort to want to put in oral intervention. Instead, I decided to do this video, which is going to cover my feedback, recommendations, and submission. First of all, I would like to thank the UN Fellows for facilitating the working group's visit to the UK. They've created a website and a WhatsApp group. I attended the 2012 visit by the working group then, and I have to say that this time round, the UN Fellows have done a splendid job in making sure that there was better community engagement with the experts, and I applaud them. However, wearing my hat as a lead tutor on our sister organization, BTWSC's event planning courses, both accredited and unaccredited, I have to say that the symposium was rather ambitious. Although they dedicated a lot more time for it, nevertheless there were too many speakers and too many topics to be covered in that time. The 2 minutes for each person from the floor to make our presentation was reasonable. However, I think it was reasonable to give leeway for some people who had literally waited 10 years to tell their lived experiences to the experts and those in the room. However, there were times when the interventions by the audience could have been better controlled in terms of timing. So that was the preamble or introduction. And now I'd like to make my submissions to the working group. I have said this in other forums, but I'm officially putting down the video. I'm wearing the hat of the convener of Taobq, the African or Black question, which is an African identity and heritage advocacy strand. Firstly, if we are in an age of decolonizing language, I would suggest that the working group, in tandem with the Permanent Forum, put forward to the UN hierarchy the idea of questioning and changing the African descent terminology, which is a misnomer because it is widely accepted within anthropology and the wider world of science that there's only one race, the human race, and that all humanity stems from Africa. So obviously all human beings, irrespective of their heritage, are of African descent or African origin. So one has to question the UN's terminology of African and people of African descent. As someone said in one of our early videos, does anyone know an African who is not of African descent?
You see, the way that language is used, it's designed to confuse us. When we talk about African descent, it's a method of trying to separate Africans in the diaspora from our sisters and brothers back home.
So that's a long-term goal to work its way up to approval by the UN governing body. Secondly, we suggest that if the working group, fellows, and the Permanent Forum are charged with dealing with all forms of racism against Africans and things African, then the word racism itself is limiting and too broad at the same time, and that we need a more specific word, and that word is Afriphobia. Afriphobia spelled with an I, because that links much closely with the continent of Africa. In Britain particularly, the word Afro has connotations to do with a hairstyle and a comb. Occasionally, we do see in UN documents the word Afriphobia used. Whilst it's a step in the right direction, we suggest that the UN functions, which is the CERD, the OHCHR, and the Fellows and the Permanent Forum used Afriphobia, spelled with an I, for the reasons given earlier on. We're glad to hear some of the speakers on the symposium stage use the word Afriphobia. even though at times it sounded like Afriphobia, at least in the case of Patrick Vernon, who talked on the same subject at our WGEPAD conference last month. He made the point, spell it with an I. Now, going on to our third submission, we urge the working group to put their voice behind the call for the government and the Home Office to implement the Wendy Williams recommendations. The background to this is that the Commonwealth and Windsor scandal. We use that terminology to make the point that the people impacted and who continue to be impacted were not only from the Caribbean, but from the Commonwealth, notably Africa and the Indian subcontinent. Wendy Williams was commissioned to do a review of the Home Office practices. The Home Office minister at that time pledged to support and implement her recommendations. But now the new government and the current Home Minister seem to reneging on that promise, and we need to hold them to account. So having the working groups backing behind this call will be most helpful. I would like to end by making a point about the last recommendation from the 2012 working group's visit to the UK. Of their recommendations, I will go to number 86 and number 108. In number 86, in part, it read, the government and society should acknowledge the legacy of slavery, the influence of British colonial past, and the specific role played by the people of African descent during this period, and the construction and development of the country. In 108, in part, it reads, the government should work with the media in order to emphasize the richness of diversity, build an open, balanced, and depoliticized migration discourse to avoid minorities and migrant scapegoating, and support balanced and accurate media reporting based on available evidence. Media professionals should be provided with training and sensitization to promote more positive and inclusive images of people of African descent and increase their visibility and contribution to the economy, culture, and development of the UK. Very good recommendations. The only thing is that we have a government that is anti-woke, that has issues about critical race theory, that has issues about teaching empire and colonialism. We have an ex-prime minister who promotes the virtues of empire. So it's going to be a tough one to get this present government to really buy into such recommendations, which I'm sure the 2022 working group will probably put forward. I was asked by a newspaper editor, what should the government do when the new recommendations are published? A word that escaped me then was sanctions. The sad truth is that the UN cannot sanction any member state that does not implement these recommendations. But I don't want to end on a negative note. I think the UN fellows have done a good job in creating the WhatsApp group. Going forward, just like we cannot rely on the government to promote WGEPAD, I'll suggest that we use that WhatsApp group to find out information and strategies that can help us to sensitize the British society to get to their hearts and minds and make little step-by-step progress, and hopefully that may impact on both local and central government. Lastly, I'd like to touch on the point made by WGEPAD Coalition UK member Chris Jones, CJ, who urged the community to help the Maat Centre in North London, a community hub under financial challenges. This we've published in our African supplement. Also, Sister Nana talked about the environment. Although she highlighted Ghana, we know that it's a global issue, and indeed she'll be moderating our WhatsApp, TikTok, environment Zoom meeting on June 30th, where the focus will be on Ghana and Jamaica. I thank you.